Great.
And just like that, we're Facebook Live. I'm Ian Robert Jones, and this is the Arts BC Facebook Live, sponsored by the 2018 Arts BC Conference. This year's conference is taking place at the Nikkei Cultural Centre in Burnaby from May 10th to 12th. And the theme of this year's conference is engagement in a new arts era. And with me to talk about all things engagement, all things new arts era, all things conference. Oh, by the way, I'm supposed to give you one of these to tell you that we are live, is Patricia Huntsman. Right. How you doing? You're frozen. Well, Patricia's frozen, and we're going to wait for her to unfreeze just for a second. But like I said, anyway, this year's conference is taking place at the Nikkei Centre. It's in Burnaby. You want to get your tickets as soon as you possibly can, because the early bird deadline is running out. It is March 31st, 2018. And there's lots of savings to be had if you get your ticket or your registration now. So I would suggest you do that. I'm still waiting for Patricia to come back. We have these little bitches sometimes with live broadcasting. Although Patricia and I have actually been on the air chatting for like the last 20 minutes. So it's kind of funny that it's just all of a sudden stuck. But we'll see what we can do here. Actually, Patricia and I have an agreement. If it stays too long, I'm going to reload and we'll set it up again. But Patricia's actually coming on today to talk to us a little bit about the conference and how it works, who the guests are. She's going to talk about how you can get a ticket, where it's at, where she came up with the theme of the conference, engagement in new arts era. And as you probably know, or you may not know, but we've been showcasing presenters and people who are going to speak at the conference for the last 3 weeks, and we're going to do it now up until May the 10th, I guess. And we're all of these people are talking about engagement, and some of them are arts people, some of them are not. Some of them come from lots of different sectors, because we want to stress that it's not just for arts people, this conference. It's for people in the cultural industries, or if you're a cultural leader of any sort, this conference would be a perfect place for you to come and get some tips, learn some tools, get some great ideas. There's lots of strategy that the people have, and they're sharing it. So we'd love it if you could come and be part of our awesome conference. Now, it looks to me like we're going to have to reload the screen here to get Patricia back. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to come back to you in 2 minutes, okay? Unless, actually, Patricia might be doing something here. And if she is, yes, there you are.
Hey.
Oh, you know what? We had a little that's great. You know what? There's nothing wrong with technical problems as long as it's not a complete failure.
Yeah, exactly. I just
bothered on for 5 minutes there, waiting for you to come back.
I know. I just reloaded it, so glad that worked.
That works great. I'm really glad you did that. So that was awesome. So I was just in the process of introducing you, and so you're the organizer, but you're also Patricia Huntsman, Culture and Communication. So I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself first, Patricia, and then maybe tell us a little bit about what you do with your consultancy.
That's right. So I have my consultancy, been based in BC since 2006, and have worked for about 24 years in the arts across Canada, like a lot of our colleagues that we have. And my consultancy focuses on cultural policy and planning. So a lot of the community cultural development work in communities all around BC. And I do a lot of community engagement and also do a lot of arts management. When I did my master's quite a few years ago now, I focused it on arts administration. So I've always been using that skill set to help organizations really thrive and go through a lot of change very often. So doing a lot of assessment work as well. So yeah, and really looking forward to having the conference up and running, actually, at this point. Yeah, I'm not only...
It's a crazy amount of work, isn't it? I mean, I can't get over how it has to be done.
It's insane. It's insane. Yeah, but I've been working, I guess it's like the last 3 years, I've been working with Kathy Ramsey on really developing the program and all the learning content for our conferences. And this year I've been really focused on a lot of the hard learning skills that we need and looking at the theme. And of course, through my own consulting work, I'm out in the field and listening to what a lot of arts and culture leaders need in terms of capacity building in their communities, and also sort of really keeping a strong link to listening to what's happening across Canada in terms of the development of our field and what's happening in the sector. So engagement is, I think, really a critical topic for our arts organizations, our arts leaders to be focused on at this time, not simply from, we have digital engagement and new channels and new platforms to engage with people, but more so that we always have to really stay relevant to our communities. And we have a lot of changes happening in our arts and culture landscape. So how are we engaging with our audiences and our communities to make sure that we're staying relevant and that we're actually really connecting people to the arts?
And so tell me then, is that what Arts BC does? That's what they do? They make those connections, they create the links between community groups, community arts organizations, and they create that relevancy and they sponsor it. Is that what you guys do?
Arts BC, they've been in existence now for nearly 40 years. It'll be the 40th anniversary next year. And Arts BC's mandate has always been focused on community cultural development. So what that means, Ian, is we really help as an arts service organization. Our job is really to give the tools and support for arts and culture leaders to excel at their work. So when we're looking at arts and culture leaders, it really, we're not looking at just administrators. We're looking at board members, at volunteers, new entrants to the field, as well as senior administrators. So it runs the gamut. And we're also looking at, there's been such changes in our field that we're also looking at new entrants, such as creative entrepreneurs, and of course, always serving artists. So and festival organizations. So while Arts BC is traditionally always was focused on community arts councils, and that still makes up a large number of its membership, our tent has really expanded because not all individuals who want to produce artwork and help their communities have a thriving arts and culture scene, they don't necessarily always identify with an arts council. So they might put on a festival and events or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of shifts that are happening right now in the arts. So Arts BC really responds to those shifts in how we can help people excel at arts and cultural development.
That's awesome, because I know that I want to tell everybody that Patricia is telling me every week, Ian, make sure everyone understands that it's not just a conference and we're just not an organization for arts admins. We're there for cultural leaders and other types of people. And now you've just said who? You've just said the group, who this conference is for.
I think it's really important, actually. If we're asking and we're giving the tools to individuals across the province to excel at arts and culture leadership, then it's incumbent on Arts BC to also try and demonstrate that leadership. So when we're planning the conference, we really start from a perspective that mirrors everyone that we're trying to serve. And so it starts with really a lens of that everyone is welcome here. So regardless of discipline, regardless of art form, regardless of whether or not you're a professional organization or a community-based organization, those lines really don't so much matter anymore. So we're wanting to see and wanting to really have people feel that they're welcome and that they're accepted at our conference. I think in many cases in the development of the arts, I can speak from my experience in BC, but it takes a while to kind of break in. And sometimes you'll go to different conferences and it feels really like a club. And if you're new and you're, joining different organizations, and maybe you're a junior coming into the organization, these conferences are essential for you to have your community of support. and you need to be with your colleagues. So we want to really start with a place that, you know, everybody is welcome here. And in terms of trying to demonstrate that leadership, we also need to be doing our own learning. So we start from a place of, you know, I call it sort of a Jedi stance. A colleague in the States said this, and the Jedi being, of course, justice. Yeah, well, that, yeah, like, certainly lightsabers, absolutely. But really looking at justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion. So what can Arts BC be doing to, in terms of justice, for instance, there are wrongs that need to be righted. So in the last few years, we've taken certainly an important look and developed our own practice and our own learning around truth and reconciliation, and recognizing that that means a lot of different things in different communities, and people being at different stages of the conversation, and in terms of learning and then unlearning colonial practices, and especially when it comes to arts and culture delivery. So we really start from that place of making sure that people feel welcome and accepted. It can be really intimidating, I think, when you have this sort of big mix of audiences who attend our conference, and we want to make sure that people just have that accessibility. A big piece that we do in terms of the inclusion piece is making sure that the conference is accessible from certainly a pricing standpoint. Arts BC heavily subsidizes the conference, and if you look at the learning content that we've developed, it's you know, it probably would work out to be about 600 and something per delegate. Actually, we did some math on it, and I mean, this is a real significant professional development opportunity and learning opportunity for arts leaders in our province. And as I mentioned, making sure that it's accessible to individuals, particularly because we have in our conference, which I think really differentiates from other more discipline-focused conferences, we have literally people from all over the province coming to attend. And so with that, we know that there's travel costs. We know it's difficult to send a whole team sometimes. So we make sure that it's accessible by having second, third, and I think even more than that. I know one organization is bringing 10 people, so that there are rate reductions there. And so, I mean, it's pretty amazing to have a conference, 3 days of learning. And I think you can basically start it between now and next weekend for $250. I mean, it's ridiculous. That would actually probably equivalent 1 day of professional development content. So we really want to make it accessible.
No, that's true. It's definitely accessible price-wise. A couple $100, $300 for 3 days, but $100 day passes. There's lots of different options for people to find a pricing point that's right for them. Check out the Arts BC website, artsbc.org, and go to the registration page, and you'll find all kinds of information about that. Just before we go any further, I just want to say hello to Meredith Hussey Bissiker. Is that your name, Meredith? I hope I've got your last name. Do you know Meredith?
Meredith works with me. She's on my team. She helps keep us like on track.
Well, that's good. Well, Meredith, thanks very much. Good to hear from you. And if anybody else has any questions they want to ask Patricia or comments, put them in the Facebook Live comment box below this broadcast as you're seeing it. There's Michelle Reconciliation. She also works for you. A lot of people who work for you watch you, by the way, Patricia.
Work with me.
Well, work with you. Good point. So just to go back to the conference for a second. So people who are thinking about coming, or even people who've already bought a registration package, what can they expect? What will they see? Can you give me an idea what the conference might look like for them? Can they go, for example, to every talk, or do the talks coincide with each other? How does it work? What can they get?
Yeah, so there is some plenary, obviously, like typically of any conference. If you go to the programs and speakers page at artsbc.org, you'll see the layout of our conference and the scheduling around that. And we have some plenary options. We do have a masterclass that is geared towards advanced learners. So what we've tried to do this year, because our tent is so big, we have so many different types of arts and culture leaders who come to attend our conference, we want to make sure that there's different learning streams. So we do have an advanced learning stream. If you're a seasoned administrator, you can definitely find new content, new learning at the conference. I think in particular, the keynote by Alan Brown will be of interest in looking at audience engagement. Also looking at the masterclass by Gerald McGrath. I think that's going to be a fantastic learning opportunity, especially for our advanced administrators. There's going to be a discussion around creative hubs. We see a lot of sort of new language around creative hubs, but also updates from the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, listening to panelists on how to design creative hubs, that it's really much more than simply a shared co-working space. So I think the theme of engagement itself actually helps us really understand from various learning perspectives and learning modes. We have also, if you are a new entrant, there's going to be some basic content as well. I think if you're a board member in particular, and this is something Arts BC has its hotline, which is Arts 911. And Michelle can also confirm for us, the majority of the calls that we receive on the hotline are pretty much board members either being unclear of their fiduciary duties as a board member. That's probably number one, and really understanding their role as a board member. And then we also have, through our executive director mastermind group, and we do a monthly roundtable call, we hear from them, and they're really needing to make sure that their boards are up to speed. So we have definitely a stream for board members called Board Basics, looking at their responsibilities. And this is essential. You actually need this this really ticked off when you're doing a lot of your grant applications to show that you've done your board development, especially for new board members. And we're also offering a risk management session for board members, which is critical. So I encourage people to just go and check out, and you should be able to see yourself in the program. Even as an artist and creative entrepreneur, we've made sure this year that there's content there for you. One in particular, I think that would be of value, is Krista Patterson's 2-hour session on business and marketing skills development. If you're an individual artist or creative entrepreneur, that's going to be really essential. And she's on Arts BC's Insight team. So we have a lot of Insight team members who will be featured and delivering content as well as our troubleshooting cafe that we have. So we have the Insight Team Cafe open. I think it's all day Friday, and basically if you're needing help, if you need to just sit down and have a chat and troubleshoot with a real experienced subject matter expert, that's available to you. And I think it's probably one of the things that we hear so often from our members, that they really value that. People, if you work in the arts, it's like working in in international aid development sometimes, or in nursing, and in these fields where you are absolutely so committed to the work that you're doing, and people get burned out. And when we've been doing our community cultural forums around the province, very often we come across people who are burned out. And it's really important, I think, when we come together there at the conference, that you are part of that community of support, that you have colleagues you can lean on, who can help you, and really that's what Arts BC is there for.
Yeah, when we were having that little technical bitch at the start, I was saying sort of the same thing. And one of the great things about this conference, which I really like the way you've programmed, is first this technical element alongside there's inspiration, there's also tools, then there's strategy, and then there's ideas. And so there's this panoply of different types of themes and ideas that you can pursue at the conference, which I think is fantastic. The conference theme is engagement, but the reality is that there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. And I particularly like the way that you've got different people, like Denise Williams from the First Nations Technology Council is coming to talk to us, and she's a creative entrepreneur, and she's going to talk about how creative entrepreneurship could also exist in the arts community. And I love that kind of cross, interdisciplinary approach you've got to the conference. So you're to be complimented for that.
Oh, thank you, Ian Jones. Thank you you, thank you.
Yes, well done, bravo, bravo, good work, good work.
I think that's really, I think that you've touched on something that's really important. I think while we need to really understand our own sector and the practices and norms that are really going to help us, I think like what was being mentioned is like we have Jean Lesage coming. Right now, there is, what we're seeing is really the professionalization of our industry, particularly in BC. A lot of the organizations in terms of post-contact and in European centered arts offerings, they really kind of came on board after Centennial funding in the 70s. And a lot of them are having legacy issues, some founder syndrome in there. And so we see a big shift happening and how arts organizations actually want to form. So there's a lot going on there. And I think Jean Lesage's sessions, we're bringing her out from Toronto. She was based in BC for a number of years. And she's focused on arts HR because let's face it, if you follow what's been happening in Globe and Mail, arts HR is huge right now. We want to make sure that we have safe environments for artists to work in and for arts workers to work in, that they're healthy organizations. And really, I think people voting up on their HR policies and understanding is huge right now. This is again like another piece that we hear through our arts hotline of people simply their boards not understanding their HR duties. So we do have a lot, and we also, like you were saying, we have the inspirational pieces as well because we need that. We need the carrot to keep us going, right?
No, you're totally right. Wilson Tang is speaking on Thursday, the 10th of May, and he's one of our inspirational speakers, and he's talking about augmented reality and how the arts community in general but just in general, the cultural community can benefit from this technology. And he's showing ways for people to stop worrying about, or to think about how that technology can be used in a really effective, useful way for us, rather than in, say, necessarily commercial ways. But you're right. He's an incredibly great speaker, very interesting guy with a really interesting idea, and he's going to be sharing it. So I think that's fantastic. Tell us about some of the other people as well, because you've got a great keynote speaker, like you said before, and Jerry McGrath is going to do an awesome job. But there's also a lot of other speakers.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's sort of like designing the conference. It's I want to learn too. And Alan Brown and the work of Wolf Brown is often I often cite it in my own consulting practice, particularly because they're really advanced at audience engagement and evaluation pieces, and they've been top researchers worldwide for a number of times. They've done incredible work around the world. I mean, I was speaking with him earlier this week, and he's like, "Oh, I was in Italy last week delivering a conference, a keynote, da da da." So he gets the international perspective, but he can also bring it down to our context in BC. So I think it'll be really an essential perspective. I think just like any arts organization, we need to be in dialogue with what's happening out in the world. So right now, if you do a media scan or you're looking at your Facebook feed, there is so much of this nationwide conversation happening around the needs of the Indigenous people in Canada. So we have Reconciliation Canada coming. We have First Peoples Cultural Council coming. We are talking about cultural appropriation on the Saturday. These are essential that if you're an arts leader, regardless of where you are in the organization, that doesn't mean you're heading the organization. It just you're an arts leader in your community. You need to be aware of that and understanding the context of that in order to do the work that you do as either an artist or an arts organization. I think that's essential. The other thing that I like in terms of going back to Alan Brown is, and that idea of dialogue with the wider world, is what are we seeing in other places, and that cross-pollination of ideas. That's always important to me. I mean, I think and I hope I will always be a lifelong learner. And it always scares me when I hear colleagues thinking, oh, I don't need to attend that conference, or I already know that. Yeah. And you know what? you should probably be stepping down from your organization if that's the piece that you think you know. There's always something to be learning, and there's always new voices coming in and to learn from. And so with that, we want to make sure that there's a mix of voices, that we're showing a diverse, like we have diversity in our panelists and in our speakers, because that mirrors what's happening in our communities around BC. So that's an essential piece. And that's sort of the lens through which we do our planning. We need to make sure that there's the hard learning content that is going to develop organizations and individuals, and then also reflecting back the conversations that are happening in the wider world, because this is what makes us good artists and good arts leaders.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't talk about was digital engagement. You've got Blair Kaplan from Blair Kaplan Communications, amongst other people, talking about the digital side of things. So you've got a lot of different things covered here in the conference. You've talked about a number of the streams already. It really sounds like it's full, you know? It sounds really full.
It is. At this point, we're kind of maxed, and we have it sort of down to the minute. we've packed a lot in. But I think, like, picking up on what you're saying about digital engagement, what we're really trying to do there is show the Canada Council lens on digital engagement, where you need to be connecting the citizen, the everyday person in your community, to the arts through digital tools. And there's so many different ways to do that. So I think to just sort of sometimes it gets dismissed as, oh, that's just a social media thing and I need to flash something up on Facebook. It's like, no, there's a much, just as we're trying to show that there's this wider conversation happening, and it can happen through various different channels. We want to be making sure that people understand that what you're doing at the end of the day is you're telling your story and you're participating in part of that conversation. And I think Wilson Tang's inspirational session that he's going to do, people think, oh, I don't need to know about VR and AR. And I'm sorry, but yes, you do. Because this is the way that people want to participate in the arts. There's a whole generation of people. This is how you can connect and create new art forms, actually. So when I was in England a couple of years ago, they were on the heels of having received their digital arts funding. It was in 2012, and this was at the end of 2015. And every major arts and cultural institution, small, large, everything, they had digital content specialists through this funding. They had they embodied digital strategies, and we have information on my website on what is digital strategy. And you know, it really is a shift in a lot of organizations when you're able, especially through augmented reality and virtual reality, when you're able to just go in and have that experience of, maybe it's from being the conductor's perspective in a symphony, or, you know, looking at robotics responding to movement, or, you know, work that's being done in dance. I mean, this is fantastic. And in Canada right now, you know, we have $88.6 million digital fund. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yeah. So yeah, we need to know more about it. Certainly.
Yeah, no, it's true. Of course, you're not going to find any argument from me. I'm the digital guy, so well done. Like it. We could have more of it. But then again, you did do the Facebook Live, which is a very good move on your part. I like that.
Brilliant.
Genius.
Although I think we have to face reality that Facebook will probably be regulated within the next year.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it? He's Mark Zuckerberg's having a few problems. We won't talk about him. I want to ask you this. We don't have that much time left, but I've been asking everybody if they can give us a conversation starter, something that we could post online so that Mr. Zuckerberg gets his wish of a meaningful dialogue between people. So we're looking to create a meaningful dialogue because we want to play along. It'll lead to us getting bigger audiences. So Patricia, have you got a conversation starter that we can, I don't know, get the ball rolling with our audience? I see you're looking at your notes.
Yeah, I was actually looking over the
conference. Written down there. I've got it written down what you said the other day, actually. So I'm all good. If you don't have it, I can just fill it in.
No, I think one thing for people to consider is just really coming up with it. You know, what is that one thing I need to learn?
Yeah, That's actually, that's what you said. What you said was, if you're an advanced arts admin, a volunteer board member, or creative entrepreneur, what do I need to master? That's what you said to me the other day.
Oh, did I? Okay, yeah.
I actually listened to you, Patricia.
Always a good idea. Always a good idea. No, I think that's it. Like, I mean, for me, going into the conference is I want to hear from our audiences what are the tools that they need to excel at arts and culture, that in their communities. That's what my role is with Arts BC, is developing those programs. And certainly in 2018-19, we want to be doing more specifically for artists and creative entrepreneurs. What do they need from us that we can help them with? So I think asking that question and putting it out to people, what is it that you want to learn and really want to improve on, and be that from an organization perspective or an individual perspective. I mean, that's it.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Final word, early registration ends on March the 31st. You want to give people a little push in that direction?
Well, if you want, yeah.
Why is that a good idea for them, Patricia?
Pardon?
Why is that a good idea for people?
Well, I think it's a substantial savings to register between now and the 31st.
There we go. The money. We were on tight budgets.
Yeah, and we do, like, as I said, we do subsidize it. We have an annual endowment that people are welcome to contribute to as well if they like. And we have that managed through the Vancouver Foundation. But the annual this endowment fund is actually specifically to make sure that Arts BC delivers a conference every year. So it was set up in, I think, 2008 or 9. It's the Alan Markin Endowment. And we want to make sure that there is an annual conference or semi-annual conference, and to get people there and really excelling as arts and culture leaders.
Well, Patricia, I think you're doing a fantastic job. This year's conference, as I said, is at the Nikkei Centre in Burnaby. It runs between May 10th and 12th. The early bird registration ends, as you can see down there, right there. It ends on March the 31st. Go there. There's significant savings to be had. I think Patricia summed it up. It's an absolutely diverse conference with a lot of different streams, some fantastic speakers, and I see the finger. So there must be something.
I do. We have to acknowledge that it takes a team to deliver a conference like this, and certainly really thankful to have Michelle, and we've had Julia helping on my team, and of course we have Kathy, Kathy Ramsey, Arts BC's board president, and our whole board is really behind the conference. They get really active leading up to it. And I think it's important, like, our board is all over the province. And so we get the perspectives and needs of people all around the province because we have this truly provincial board. And the other people, we have a whole conference committee hosted very graciously through the Burnaby Arts Council at Deer Lake Gallery in Burnaby. And they're doing a fantastic job bringing all the pieces together and the logistics together. So we're in good hands.
Okay, well, look, we look forward to seeing you in Burnaby, May 10th, 12th, and we look forward to seeing all of you out in the world. Come and join us. It'll be fun. You'll have a great time. 3 fantastic days. Patricia, you're awesome.
Great. Thanks.
See you then. Okay, bye. Okay, bye.
Bye. Happy Friday. Bye.
Same to you. Bye.